Welcome to another episode of I Speak African. I'm your host Yanu. In today's episode, I'm gonna focus on culture in the diaspora or the African diaspora. Um, so as I said in my past videos, I'm American because I was born in America, lived here my entire life. But I'm also Nigerian. I'm also Yoruba. So growing up in my family, we didn't experience, or yeah, I didn't experience, nor did any of my siblings experience like anti-black sentiment or rhetoric. Like it wasn't allowed. Weren't allowed to use disparaging words towards other black ethnicities. Um, for example, as a Nigerian, I hear a lot. I didn't start hearing this word until I got older. The word akata. I hear a lot of Nigerians say that akata, or just a lot of West Africans say it. And when I would hear it, I would be like, "What does that mean?" And I would hear people say like, "Oh, it means black," and it's like, no, it doesn't mean black. There's actually a word for black in Yoruba, and it's like, no, people often use it as animal or like a crazy, like a rabid animal, like somebody has rabies, or I mean, an animal that has rabies. And I'm like, that's wrong, and the worst part is it's black people calling other black people this. Never heard them call a white person that, but So I remember when I got to college, like I think somebody called me that once. I can't remember. But I remember when I got to college, I would go to the African student meetings, and that's how they would refer to Black Americans or even sometimes Caribbeans. I'm like, yo, that's wild, But that's what you hear. And then I found it very disheartening. Like, why? And even to this day, like I don't say it. It's not a part of my vocabulary, and it's still extremely offensive. And that's when I realized that African culture, as in the country that the origin of where you come from, they perpetuate a lot of anti-black rhetoric, and towards each other. We do it to each other. But when we're dealing with Oyibo people, Wazungu people, we change. We often disregard our culture. We water it down in order to fit into their lives. Case in point, like traditional marriages. When somebody marries a Wazungu person or Yubo person, you see that, sure, they'll wear their traditional clothes for one day, and that one day is the wedding. And then never ever again. You don't see it again. You don't see them wearing it at home, or when they go to church, or when they go to whatever, wherever they go, or they go to a party. They don't wear our clothes anymore. They wear a suit, or they wear some khakis or whatever, But you don't see it again, and it's like, we as Africans, we don't need to be ashamed of our culture or our tribes, because we're not ashamed when we're dealing with other black people. Therefore, we shouldn't be ashamed at all. And um, like I said, I realized that Africans are some of the biggest perpetrators of anti-blackness, and I realized that when I got older, there's a lot of Afrophobia and xenophobia that happens in our communities, and it needs to be addressed. And largely that's due to imperialism, and then also the lack of exposure that Africans from the continent don't have. Like a lot of Africans from back home, they don't see what's happening. They don't really see what's happening in America or the UK or France. They see it like snippets off of social media or whatever, and they think, oh yeah, that's actually what's happening. And it's like, no, the African diaspora culture is so much more. It's very vast, and a lot of us don't see that. But I'm hoping one day soon that that will come to an end, or we'll get better as a people. Now, growing up in the U.S., I never really came across, like, you don't meet a lot of, even as a Black American with, a Yoruba name. Sure, I got made fun of. I remember when I was in elementary school, it's called an African booty scratcher, and yeah, as a kid, I always thought like, yeah, I would get upset, but as a grown up, I just thought it was funny because it's like stupid. It's like that notion that Africans scratch their. I never got it. To this day, I still don't get it, but whatever. But yeah, I was saying you don't really meet a lot of disrespectful Black Americans or even Caribbeans. But like when you come home to Africa as a Black person, if you don't look like you're from their tribe, and they'll know that you're a foreigner or somebody who's not from the tribe, they'll be very disrespectful at times. And it's like, okay, but you can treat this person who looks nothing like you with the utmost respect, you know. And this is not me trying to put down Africans because, again, I'm also African and also I love my people, but you know, and also I still have family back in Nigeria and in other African countries. So, this is not me trying to say that, you know, people from back home you know, are not good people. I'm saying this because I want Africans, we as a people, to change our whole entire mentality on how we see each other, and we're extremely judgmental to each other. But a trend that I'm starting to notice is that, like, culturally, respect is not really apparent in our culture anymore. Like, when I was growing up, you respect your elders. You don't talk back to them. You don't use profanity in front of them. You don't talk crazy in front of them. The way you dress is, you dress modestly in front of them. Nowadays, you just see, Gen Zs and millennials saying whatever they want from their parents, doing whatever they want from their parents, and oftentimes I think the parents pretend like they don't see it, but I know they see it. Also, our cultures become very selfish and very pretentious and ostentatious. And it really needs to change because, like, growing up, it was about sharing with your community. If somebody's less fortunate than you give them what you have, and vice versa. Now you don't see that anymore. It's all about, like, me. Yeah, and you know that's not productive, or that's not conducive to a healthy culture. The problem when and also now you're seeing this this notion of cultural appropriation amongst Africans, which I think is weird. Like I said in the other previous video, how the Caribbean girl said that she doesn't want Africans or Black Americans participating in Carnival because it's cultural appropriation. And I'm thinking, when was, you know, paying homage to other African cultures appropriating? And just like the other day, I saw I think it was something on Twitter or something or Instagram. And it was like, I think they were Ivorian or some kind of other West African, and it was like, the question was like, is this offensive or is this appropriation that these Ivorians or other West Africans are wearing a shobi for their wedding, which is a Nigerian thing. And I'm thinking, like, no, they're paying homage to Nigerian culture. Why is that even an issue? Even if somebody wants to wear kente and they're not from Ghana, let them wear kente. Does it matter? There are people out there that are really appropriating um, African culture. Like, I think one of these big, I forget which clothing store was it, but they have like some. There was a whole big thing, I think, back in like 2016, where they actually copied, Ethiopian, Eritrean clothes and put it into their store, and it was like traditional African clothes or something. They call it something like that. It's like, no, that's actually appropriation. So, you know, that's something that, like, no one, Africans, we don't steal each other's cultures. We borrow, but we don't steal and call it our own. But, there are a lot of things about our cultures that I think more people should admire and actually be proud of. Like, for me, I like, I watch like a lot of British, not well, British, like TV shows, and like the Black British TV shows. So like Top Boy and this new show called Supercell, about like super powered Black British people. And I like when they use like their British slang and they say like in it or wagwan, even though I know it's Caribbean, but I know a lot of Black Brits are from, they immigrated from the islands, or they're either from the islands or from Africa. I like that a lot, and it makes me laugh, and I think it's a. And when I hear other Black people use that slang, I don't see anything wrong with it, and nor do I. I haven't heard any Afro English or Caribbean English people saying that it's a cultural appropriation. But then again, I don't speak for them. I just know I haven't heard it. Even when I would go to work, there was a colleague of mine. She was from Trinidad. No, she was from Guyana, and I would always say Wagwan to her. We would talk about Caribbean stuff, and she never told me to stop saying Wagwan. You know, but something else I want to bring up. Um, Africans naming their children. Now, these are names that we need to stop naming our children. Precious, promise, gift, gifty, conception, victory, Lazarus, Theophilus, Ebenezer, divine, anything with God in it. God's Son, godly, God free, noble, favor, redemption, and charity. And there are a lot more names that I can't think of right now, but that's what we need to stop. And also, the idea of naming your child an African name because you like it, but you don't know when to correctly use it. Case in point, the American actress Amandla Steinberg. Now, her name is a South African name. I think it's Zulu. If it's not Zulu, then y'all correct me. Zulu people correct me, or if you're from another tribe in Africa, you know what the name is, correct me. But her name is written incorrectly, and she often tells, whenever people ask, "Oh, where's your name come from?" She says it means power. So the name does mean power, but the way she has it written is power when it's an adjective, not a proper noun. If her name was written correctly as a proper noun, it would not be, it would not have that spelling. It would actually be a different name. And I always say this: when you see a name that you like, make sure you do the history behind it, um, so you can get it correctly. I know so many girls, not so many girls, I know a lot of women, I've seen a lot of women who have named their daughters Sade. And I'm like, what's the rest of it? And they're like, oh no, just Sade. I'm thinking, you can't just name your child Sade. It needs to be more. It's like naming your child Ayo. You can't just name your child Ayo or Dele, or you can't just name or any other Nigerian name or Yoruba name that doesn't have the full name, like the whole entire. You can't just name your child Ola. What's the rest? Ola what? So a lot of people, when you find a name that you like, make sure you do the proper research so that your child doesn't grow up and it's like, hey, that's not the full correct, pronunciation or spelling of my name. Yeah. But thank you for listening in to another episode of I Speak African. I'm your host, Ianu. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel so that I can continue creating more content. I can be reached at ispeakafrican12@gmail.com. And these same episodes can be downloaded on Spotify. Thank you and stay blessed.